politics. And true to the mission of Eagleton, which is to link the study of politics with the practice of politics, Are You Ready was launched a few years ago as an extension of groundbreaking research that we did on young people running for office and serving in office. And with this research, our aim was not just to explore young adults' pathways to politics and their way of governing, but certainly we wanted to build the capacity of young adults to run for office and work on campaigns. So this semester, we began a 3-workshop virtual series. And we began the series by featuring a selection of young elected leaders here from New Jersey. So today, we're going to hear from some campaign experts who've played a central role in organizing and administering campaigns. And they'll share with us the nuts and bolts of what it takes to organize and administer a successful campaign. Once again, we want to thank our colleagues at the New Leadership National Network at the Center for American Women in Politics, who are co-hosting this event with us today. And I now want to introduce my colleague, Christabel Cruz, who's the Director of New Leadership, and she will introduce our student moderators. And we want to thank you all for joining us today, and I want to thank you, Christabel, for your partnership. So take it away, Christabel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matto, and thank you so much to the Center for Youth Political Participation for asking us to co-sponsor this wonderful event. I am Director of New Leadership at the Center for American Women in Politics, which is a unit of the Eagleton Institute of Politics that focuses on the study and data and analysis and education of training of women in American politics. Our program, New Leadership, is an extension of this work. It is focused on a college women's public leadership training institute that runs every summer. We will have one as well in 2021 in June. For students interested, please feel free to reach out to me or visit cop.rutgers.edu to learn more about how to apply. We will be joining with our national partners from over 20 states for this program. And we are so excited to see student leaders already getting involved by participating in this event, and having students be our moderators for this particular event is truly a pleasure, and we're very happy to have them with us. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our student moderators, and then they're going to take it away and lead us through this really important discussion on campaigning with our panelists. So first I'll introduce Marc Younker, who is currently a junior majoring in political science and minoring in critical intelligence studies. He serves as Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Association of Big Ten Students, and he has interned for the political team on the Cory Booker for President campaign, in the US Senate through the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and for Angela Rye's Impact Strategies political advocacy firm. In addition, he is a scholar at the Institute for Responsible Citizenship and a fellow in the Lloyd C. Gardner Fellowship at Eagleton. And he is also an undergraduate associate at the Eagleton Institute of Politics. So welcome, Marc. We also have with us Aarushi Govil, who is a 3rd-year student at Rutgers University, majoring in chemical engineering and minoring in women and gender studies. She currently serves as the vice president of the engineering student body and is involved in the Riley Douglas Engineering Learning Living Community and the Society of Women Engineers as a mentor. In addition, she's an ambassador for Douglas Residential College and has completed interns for DC-based nonprofits, as well as a current internship with Colgate-Palmolive, and a future internship with Unilever as a supply chain intern this summer. After graduation, she wants to pursue a JD in patent law. So thank you, and welcome Aarushi and Marc. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to our panelists for joining us. And thank you for all our attendance. We are really happy to have this conversation going. And so I will kick it off by introducing our panelists. So we have Ben Ghiano, and Ben currently serves as the Chief of Staff to New Jersey Assemblyman Robert Karabinchak from the 18th Legislative District. As Chief of Staff, Ben is responsible in managing the Assemblyman's legislative portfolio, which includes bills establishing a utility-scale solar program, expanding New Jersey's infrastructure bank, and promoting electric vehicle charging infrastructure. More recently, Ben established his own company, Blue Green Sustainability Consultants, with the objective of guiding local businesses and government alike to become more socially and environmentally responsible. He holds a bachelor's degree in chemistry from the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts, and is currently pursuing a master's degree in sustainability management at Columbia University in New York City. So welcome, Ben. And we also have Roxy Coburger. Roxanne has spent almost 10 years in New Jersey politics for the Republican Party. She began her political career volunteering on local campaigns in Ocean County before graduating from the College of New Jersey in 2011 with a bachelor's in political science. After graduating, Roxanne spent 5 years with the Christie administration, working in constituent relations, intergovernmental relations, and policy throughout her tenure. In 2018, she was the regional political director for Southern New Jersey for Bob Hogan for U.S. Senate, where she managed the field operations for 8 counties. Currently, Roxanne is statewide political director of NJGOP and was on the Save Jersey's Right Women to Watch list in 2019 and 2021. So welcome to our panelists. Thank you for coming on. And to begin our discussion, I'm going to pass it over to my moderator, Marc.
Thanks, Christabel, and thanks, Aarushi, for those wonderful introductions. Just to kick off this panel, I'd love to start with a question about what is your current role and how did you end up in your position? So we can start off with Ben.
Great. Well, thank you both for having me on, and Roxy as well for joining me here today as well. So my path is a little unorthodox in politics. Like Aarushi, I actually have a chemistry background before I jumped on board to political campaigns. So I was an intern on Governor Murphy's campaign, which ultimately led to a position within his administration. From there, I actually met my current boss as I was working in the legislative affairs team at the governor's office, which has allowed me to introduce myself to many of the New Jersey state legislators. From there, I also volunteered a lot of my free time, continuing to do political campaigns in my after hours. So I worked with the New Jersey Democratic Assembly Campaign Committee to continue that particularly with Middlesex County legislators where I grew up, and thus meeting Assemblyman Karabinchak and linking up with him. And that's how I wound up moving over to the legislative side of things and joining his office.
Thanks for that, Ben. And Roxanne?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I know it was addressed a little bit in my my biography, but thank you guys for having me on today. I really appreciate it. It's a really an honor to be here talking with you guys and talking with these students at Rutgers. You know, I got involved just, you know, being really interested in politics. I kind of grew up, you know, with in a family that was interested in it and talked about it a lot. And we discussed different ideas. So it was something that was very interesting to me and important at the same time because, you know, politics is really, you know, what, you know, has governed so much of our lives. So for me, it was something that was very important to get involved in and have my voice heard. And I decided to go to school for political science, like Marc, and, you know, and get involved because that's really, you know, where you're going to start making a difference. And so from there, I graduated and went on to work in the Christie administration, where I worked in constituent relations, which is probably, in my opinion, probably one of the most important offices that you should, you know, always make sure that you get an internship in constituent relations because you learn so much and it's so hands-on. I worked in intergovernmental affairs where I worked with our local elected officials on both sides of the aisle, worked with our legislators, and eventually moved on to work in policy. And then actually after my time spending time on the official side, I joined the Hugan campaign, which was a statewide US Senate campaign. You know, it was a completely different animal working on the political side versus the official side.
Thank you. You guys both touched on it a little bit, but if you could continue by answering, how would you encourage people to get started with working on a political campaign? I think this can be a little daunting for especially our younger attendees. So Roxy, would you like to start us off on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things I'll say is get involved by connecting with your local party. If you're really interested in getting involved in politics in the campaign side of things, I would absolutely reach out to your county party, start volunteering on campaigns, on local campaigns, help, you know, that's the best way to get the hands-on experience. You're talking to voters one-on-one, you're in the office working with other volunteers, with campaign staff, you're meeting the candidates. And that's really probably the easiest and best way to start really diving into getting into the political field.
I really love that answer because it is something that everyone can join pretty easily and get really involved really quickly. Ben, would you like to continue?
Yeah, I'll echo her comments here as well. And one thing I might add is that the young Dems and the young Republicans are really the backbone of a lot of campaigns. And so you'll meet a lot of political operatives, you meet a lot of young folks who are also trying to run for office, and folks who've already been there before. And it's a great place to meet a lot of people who become your friends and really join the industry. So I would really, really recommend that anybody who's interested go out and join their young political organizations. That's really the backbone right there.
I think I love that both of you touched on how you can really start locally and build yourself up. I think that's really great advice. I'll pass it over to Marc.
Thanks, Aarushi. Definitely love to hear what encouraged you all to join campaigns and getting into political campaign work. But where there are opportunities, I would definitely say there are also challenges. I'd love to hear about what are some challenges of working on a political campaign that you've encountered. I will start with Ben.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges that I noticed, particularly when I was working on the Murphy campaign, right, is starting to see, New Jersey is a diverse place with a lot of diverse opinions, and not everybody's going to agree with you, and that's okay. But politics is about people, so it's important to listen and start to see how we can, engage with other folks, and always be kind to people. So one of the biggest challenges is like, you're going to be faced with a lot of people who don't agree with you, and you have to have thick skin for that. But you should always be respectful on the way back. And so, I would say that's certainly the challenge that I faced there. And continuing even on the government side that we continue to face when constituents don't agree with things that we're doing, right? But we're always trying to do our outreach, right? Trying to convince people and show them that we are doing good things for New Jersey. That's ultimately what we're hoping to do.
Really great to hear, Ben. And Roxy?
Sure, yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Ben. There's a lot of different personalities when you're in politics. Everybody's got an opinion. So managing those personalities is definitely a huge challenge. But it's great for, building that skill, being able to communicate and talk with people. One of the challenges that I would say working on campaigns, and this is more of a physical challenge, is the long hours. It takes a lot of work running a campaign. So it's really not meant for, for the weak. You got to have the passion, you got to have the drive, you got to stay motivated. And sometimes it is hard, and I think that's a huge challenge sometimes. But, like Ben said, this is where you're going to meet a lot of your closest friends, and that's what's going to keep you going.
It definitely is. And I can attest to having to volunteer on a few political campaigns. I've met some of my best friends on them. Another question I have talking on the topic of challenges, sorry, there's a bit of a tongue twister there. What is something that you wished someone would have told you before you got started in politics? So a little tip or trick that really would have, you think, might have helped your career or helped the campaign team along the process. Roxy, if you want to start.
Yeah, I mean, something I wish somebody had told me when I first got started was probably just that it's going to take all of you, to get into this. It's not an easy field, and I don't want to sugarcoat any of this because, I want you to understand what it's really like. So I wish somebody, back then in the day kind of would have told me, it's going to take a lot to get to where you want to be. And that, you got to keep working hard at it.
Definitely. And Ben?
Yeah, we agree. Again, like I mentioned before too, like having thick skin is really important, right? That's something that I think a lot of folks will tell you when you come in, but a lot of folks won't tell you to make sure you take time for yourself too when you're working on campaigns, right? You need to make sure that you're keeping your body healthy, your mind healthy. Try to get enough sleep. Like Roxy said, like this is quite a really intense process. So sometimes there are fleeting hours of sleep, but when you can get that, really do that. So it's really important to take care of yourself, while you're working so hard for a cause you believe in.
I really appreciate that point of prioritizing yourself, because I think sometimes as college students, we forget to do that. And like in the long run, you can only put all of yourself into a campaign if you're making sure that you're okay yourself. So that was a really, really great point. And it kind of leads into a little more about our next question, which is, if you could please provide some insight on what it's like to work on a campaign, either as a candidate or as a campaign worker, and especially what was your most memorable moment? I'll start off with Ben.
One thing on any campaign, it doesn't matter if you're working on a Senate campaign, a governor's campaign, assembly campaign, all the way down to a town council race. No job is too small for you. Whether you are the campaign director, the political director, or a field director, doesn't matter. If you need to go and knock on doors, do it, because that's what reaches voters. So no job should ever be below you. So I really cannot stress that enough, that in order for have a successful campaign, you absolutely have to do the jobs that aren't pretty sometimes, and that's okay. I can recall on GOTV days, every single person on the Murphy campaign was out knocking on doors, and that shows the character, and exactly what people want to see, right? That we do care, and every single person who's involved is really working there. I would add to my favorite, most memorable moment, I think, for me, was like really the late nights. Some of the nights that I can recall, not just on the Murphy campaign, but some of the Democratic Assembly Campaign Committee nights, where we'd just be at the headquarters very late, beer and pizza, hanging out with our friends, putting together signs, making laughs, and not in a pandemic. That's some of the best memories that I have from all of the campaigns. And then you wake up at 6 a.m. and do it all over again, essentially. So long hours, but always a good time.
I love that you really liked your team and got that bonding moment, because I think that really does help people get through sometimes what is a really tough cause to push for and such a hard job. It's great to know that the people around you are there to support you. Roxy, would you like to continue?
Yeah, I think Ben really summed it up well. Late nights, laughing, you're punchy, you're putting lawn signs together, knocking doors, dealing with, volunteers who are, just as tired as you are, and managing that, the field offices, and, it's craziness and it's chaotic, but it's so much fun at the same time. Day to day, you're probably going to be in an office making that voter contact, knocking on doors, helping your candidates up and down the ballot, whether you're, working on a congressional race and you're helping the local candidates down ballot. We're all working together towards the same goal. It's, if you are there with all these people that you're making these friendships with, you're building these relationships with, and it's you kind of forget how tired you are. You forget, that you're on your 5th week of pizza, and you're just chugging along. I think probably my most memorable part on the campaign, especially with the Hugon campaign, being down in Ocean County, which is of course a very Republican area, and being in Seaside Heights and walking the boardwalk. We had all of our supporters with us, and we had people on the boardwalk chanting and high-fiving Bob. And it was just, it's those political events, those group events that, they're so exciting. And, those are the things that you're always going to remember.
I love that you really love connecting with the voters. That's just very heartwarming to hear, because I love when people working on campaigns do care about their constituents like that. So that's very, very admirable. My next question is, what are some things students can do to set themselves up for success? For example, how do you find yourself a mentor? I know that mentorship has helped me throughout my journey as like a woman in STEM and a woman in pre-law. So I think it's so important to set yourself up for success kind of early on. Roxy, would you like to start us off on that question?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think Ben and I also touched on it before. It's getting involved, building those relationships, making those contacts, whether it's volunteering at your local office or if it's joining your college Republican or Democrat clubs. and meeting people and working with your political science team at the college, even if you're in chemistry or a different major, if it's something you're interested in, talk to your political science department, tell them you're interested in getting involved. And there are so many opportunities. People are always looking for interns and volunteers, and looking for that next generation to come up. So yeah, definitely reach out to as many people as you can and get creative.
Reassuring to hear that we can start at like any level, because
Absolutely.
sometimes a little discouraging for people that they think that they're too young to start, but it's great to hear you're never too young to start. Ben, would you like to continue?
Absolutely. Yeah, another thing I would add is take risks and don't be afraid to do so. I started in chemistry, Aarushi too, right? And politics was not my first career choice. But I would really, really encourage people that, even if you're not studying political science or history or anything like that, there's a whole world out there, right? Liberal arts is great. So, I would really encourage people to take a risk. Reach out to your local assembly office. I know our office offers internships, right? I'm sure every other office in the state does too, right? And if you want to learn about policy, right? So many of us are open to helping you grow. And do what you want, like, and learn certain policies. Like, we focus a lot on energy here and a lot of the things on infrastructure in our office, right? Find what you're interested in. So, read a lot, network, go and volunteer. Those are really great things. As for finding a mentor, know your goals, short term, long term, where you want to end up. Pick people that are where you hope to see yourself in 15, 20 years, right? And if those people aren't accessible to you, think about what their career path was and look for people who are in similar roles that could lead to that as well. Those are great mentor figures as well. And so I would really recommend, once you have that, then start reaching out and remember to just meet consistently. It's only it can only grow and help you in your future. So yeah, I'll end it there.
Very well said. I think every very great mentor I've had always started off saying, where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? And how can I get you there? So that's a very great point. I believe it is time for our Q&A. So I'm going to pass it to Marc to start us off on that.
Yes, thank you, Aarushi. It's definitely time for our Q&A with the audience. I want to remind everybody who has joined our webinar to feel free to use the Q&A function on Zoom to submit your question for the panelists. Our first question from the audience is, are there benefits to being a young candidate? Are voters excited to see young people running for office? We'll start this one with Roxy.
Absolutely. You can never, diminish somebody's experience. Everybody comes from a different background. Everybody has different experience. And, having a younger candidate, sometimes you need someone who has fresh ideas, someone who comes in and has, a fresh pair of eyes, really. There's always going to be pros and cons because this is politics. You're always going to have people who disagree and people who agree. So, I wouldn't let your age discourage you at all. Because you know what, even if you run and you lose, you learn. You're going to learn from that, what you could have done better next time. And you're building up a name for yourself as well. So I definitely would never, discourage somebody, because based on their age or anything like that.
I would completely agree. I think you're never too young to run. And you really shouldn't be discouraged from that. Most people lose their first time. Then that's okay. Now you have experience to build off of and go at it again. A second go around and you can truly use that experience to your advantage the next time around. And yeah, I think there is a push for younger candidates that's starting to come around, right? As folks are aging out, particularly in the federal level, more younger candidates. So we're starting to see more and more of them, right? And we're starting to see the same thing here in New Jersey as well. And I think that's kind of the wave that's going to keep happening for generations.
I appreciate that, because I do think that any loss, even if it is an election or any sort of mistake that you may have made, now you're going to learn from it. It's always an opportunity to grow and improve. So that's a really great point. Our next question is, we often hear that raising money or asking for money is the worst part of running for office. How do you advise candidates to tackle or survive fundraising? Ben, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Yeah, it's a weird thing to do. Obviously you can tap into your network first, right? Of folks that you know. And then the other side of it is grassroots organizing too. Particularly if on the progressive side, right? If you're running a progressive campaign, right? There's a lot of money to be found in grassroots advocacy. Chip in $3 here, chip in $3 there. It really adds up. And as you are more established, that will follow as well. So don't be afraid to ask for money is the bottom line there, and particularly tapping into your own contacts.
Roxy, if you'd like to answer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always spent my my career on the political side of things rather than the finance side, but I've definitely learned a lot over the last couple of years from our very talented finance director here at NJGOP. And it's always uncomfortable to ask for money, no matter what kind of position you're in. But I think you need to also think about, different ways that you can fundraise, including, digital. Digital has become a huge way of fundraising lately. You see it in text messaging, Facebook ads, social media ads, email. I'm sure you guys get tons of fundraising emails every day. So that's, a little bit easier, way of asking for money. But, when you are making those cold calls, when you're in call times, what they call it, when you're, directly asking people for money over the phone, you always have to remember these people know why you're calling. They know you're calling to ask for money. So, I would say when you're making those phone calls and you're talking to people, lead with what you're doing already, why you're successful, and how their money is going to help you win and, make your municipality, your district, or whatever successful.
That's some great advice. Thank you both. Marc, would you like to ask the next question?
Yeah, that was really important insight you provided there, Roxy and Ben, especially talking about or continuing on the topic of digital. We are in the age of TikTok, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, all different types of social media platforms. The next question is, what suggestion can you offer about the use of social media and campaigning? Are there particular platforms that are essential and some that are unnecessary? How often should you post? These are really good questions. Roxy, since you started talking about digital, would you like to continue?
Yeah, absolutely. Social media is it's an interesting thing, especially in politics. It can be used for good and for bad. So you always want to make sure that you are projecting a positive profile on social media. So, and that goes for, your personal accounts, what you're saying on social media. Is it appropriate? Is it offensive? Is it, is this how you want other people to judge you at the end of the day? So I would definitely make sure that you take care of managing your personal social media pages, as well as, if you are working on a campaign, work on a candidate's social media page. You see a lot of people on Facebook, Instagram. Those are really the two biggest platforms that I've seen in campaigning. Really don't see too much when it comes to TikTok or Snapchat or anything like that. But again, on the Republican side of things, we do tend to be an older crowd, so they aren't really using those apps, like they are Facebook or something like that. So definitely mostly Facebook. It's very Facebook heavy.
I would agree. I think Facebook heavy is number one. A lot of Snapchat, TikTok, there's not too many candidates who are really using that. As you grow, and like if you're talking about a presidential campaign, right, obviously you can reach people with those as well. I would also say that don't be afraid to tap into like digital print as well, media. So in New Jersey, we've got the Tap Into Network is a great example, right? There's tons and tons of digital media sites that are often happy to post an op-ed, or particularly if you have the luxury of already being an incumbent, right? A lot of these websites already allow you to have a column on there, which you can talk to your constituents directly, and they have tons and tons of readership that isn't necessarily on social media either. So social media is incredibly important for it. And as for how often you should post, as much as you have updates, right? If you have information to share with your constituents, right? Whether it's something from motor vehicles to something your campaign's doing, right? The more information you can get out to folks is more engagement that your candidate can have, and more likes that they can get, right? So that ultimately turns into votes at the end of the day.
Definitely, and I think engagement on social media is going to look like the future. We definitely saw a switch in campaigning styles this past year with COVID. Aarushi, would you like to ask the next question?
Yes, this last question actually leads in pretty perfectly to what's about to be our new normal. Everything's going digital. Let's see if it'll stay digital in a post-pandemic world, but everything has shifted because of the pandemic. So my question is, how has COVID-19 affected your work, if at all? Roxy, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, it's definitely affected voter contact. Of course, I mean, you can imagine, you know, knocking doors less and less, you know, it's that in-person contact. You know, we're doing more digital, obviously. You know, we're making phone calls from home remotely, you know, via our tools and services that we provide to our campaigns and organizations. So we're able to do voter contact that way. You know, we're doing text messaging, we're doing more social media, Facebook ads, emails, everything's online, including the digital petitions, you know, and which has been honestly like probably one of the best things that's happened for campaigns is being able to collect signatures digitally instead of having to do it in person. But yeah, COVID-19 has definitely had a huge impact on the way things operate.
That's some great insight. Ben, would you like to continue?
Yeah, it's certainly changed the way we do business, and not just on the political side, but on the government side. You know, we went remote for quite a while as well. Obviously, I'm back in the office now, but for a long time, the legislature wasn't meeting in person, and committees continue not to meet in person right now. You know, particularly, only the chairs are going down a trend at any given time, and only certain voting sessions are in person. So it's really changed the way we do business. It has created quite a struggle at some of the executive departments, right, and how you know, they're able to interact with some of the constituents in New Jersey. You know, and then in other aspects, it makes it a little easier to connect with folks because they realize that they can get us through email all the time now. And so it's a give and take, really, and it's going to take some getting used to, I think. And you know, we may have some things that stay, like those virtual petitions. I think that's here to stay. And then we may have some things that we realized, hey, the old way was a lot better, and we go back to that as well.
It's good to hear that you guys are able to find some silver linings, though, because it is a pretty terrible situation sometimes with moving online, and especially with different internet sources and such. So I definitely admire you guys keeping at it and adapting how you can, because that is very admirable. Marc, would you like to continue?
Yeah, switching gears a little bit, this question from the audience asks, is attending law school ultimately necessary to be successful in politics? Ben, do you want to start us off?
I would say no, but it sure does help. I know quite a few lawyers who work in the industry. You know, if you want to be counsel, absolutely, you need to go to law school. A lot of policy folks also have law backgrounds, but you don't need it, right? I do a lot of policy work myself, and I'm studying sustainability. So you don't really need that law background, but in a lot of cases, it really does help.
Thanks, Ben and Roxy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You know, it's not necessary, but it does help. You know, like Ben said, it's you know, you have a lot of policy folks who have their law degree. Certainly, a lot of lawmakers have their law degree, but it's not necessary. You know, you see a lot of legislators that are, you know, from all different kinds of backgrounds, and I think that's really what really contributes to you know, creating good law, because you need that you know, different experiences and different backgrounds. You know, if we just had all lawyers in the legislature, you know, we would just have one opinion, really. So it's good to have diversity in your background.
Yeah, I would add that it is a beautiful thing that in New Jersey, all of our legislators, like they're part-time because they have other jobs, and that really, like Roxy said, is tremendous in bringing the diversity of opinions and ideas to the legislature that improves our state.
Well said, Ben and Roxy. Thank you. I'm very fascinated by this next question from the audience, which is, what is the best way to interact with a constituent who disagrees with you? And can you share a experience of when you've had a disagreement? And would you like to start us off?
Sure. The best thing you can do is listen. I really think it's important to listen first before speaking your mind, right? Oftentimes you won't find a resolution, and that's okay. You have to understand that that's okay. Because there always will be that difference of opinion, and you can really share your points on why you think your side is correct, and they'll share the points on why it's correct. And sometimes it gets heated, and that's okay too. As long as you continue to be respectful, particularly when you work on the government side of things, you have to maintain professionalism and be respectful. So sometimes the phone call is not going to go always the greatest, and like I said, it's okay. Just maintain that professionalism.
I really like that advice, because as someone who tends to be very, very passionate, sometimes taking that minute to listen can actually help develop my ideas and my views even better. So that's really great advice. Roxanne, would you like to continue?
Yeah, absolutely. Working in the Christie administration and constituent relations, we of course had our share of phone calls of people who disagreed with many of his policies and his ideas. But as Ben said, you have to remain professional and respectful and polite. Absolutely listen to what they have to say. Acknowledge that you understand what they're saying. And of course, always make sure that you're telling them that you're going to make sure that you get their concerns to the governor or your candidate or whoever. That was a normal practice that we did in constituent relations. Governor Christie always knew what the constituents of New Jersey were concerned about or what they were saying, and what were the issues that were going on, because of course it changes every week. So yeah, absolutely make sure that they feel heard and acknowledged. But even if you disagree with them, you just have to remain polite and kind of just maintain that professionalism.
That's great advice on how to stay professional. I think that can be tough sometimes. So thank you. Marc, I believe we have another question.
Yes, and definitely keeping your pulse on your constituents and keeping your ears open to hearing all sides and perspectives is definitely important in politics. This question, I think, is coming from a future candidate themselves. They want to know, can you have a personal life and be a candidate? What do you advise candidates about balancing work and personal life in running a successful campaign? Rox, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It is not an easy thing to balance. I mean, especially, and it depends on the office. If it's statewide, of course, it's going to be much more difficult than, balancing your personal life and your political life at the municipal level. But, like as Ben had said earlier, you got to take time for yourself, even as a candidate. And it's hard. You're going to really annoy your campaign manager when you stop answering your phone because you want to go fishing with your son or something, but you have to take that time for yourself because you can't pour from an empty cup. And it is grueling being on a campaign and being a candidate. It's exhausting, but definitely always make sure that you take time for yourself. It is possible. You can kind of sneak off sometimes. But your campaign manager is going to be on you, but it's doable.
I would add that there's just remember when you are running for office or you're a public servant, right? There is that extra layer of scrutiny that exists, right? And whether it's your opponent or whether it's your constituents, right? Their eyes on you, and that's important to recognize, right? So just be conscious of what you post on social media. Be conscious of what you do, right? Because inevitably somebody's watching. So just keep that mindset. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to add that, it's all about optics. You always have to think like, how is this going to look if it turns up in the papers tomorrow?
Well said. Well said. Our final question is, there were a lot of changes to the election practices in New Jersey and other states, such as increased VBM. Is that good or bad for young candidates? Roxy, would you like to start us off?
I wouldn't say it's good or bad either way. It definitely was a mixed bag. It was definitely interesting to watch, what happened last year. Are Republicans going to send more ballots back? Are Democrats going to be, more inclined to send ballots back? Do they want to go to the polls in person? It's honestly, you saw more, the older generations wanted to go in person. Because that's what they were used to. That's what they knew. They didn't like this new system. It was confusing for them. It was something new they had to learn, where instead they could just show up to the voting booth and press the button like they always did. So I don't think it's necessarily good or bad either way. It's really all about having a really good vote by mail program with pushing and chasing is what we call it. But you just have to stay on top of it.
I would agree too that I wouldn't say it's good or bad. Again, the focus really should be just increasing voter turnout in general. The more that we can do as policymakers and whatnot to increase voter turnout, whether that's allowing more people to vote by mail, whether that's early voting in certain cases, right? That will help drive voter turnout. And not to say that it'll favor younger candidates or older candidates, right? But if we can get more people to vote, that means more people are being represented, and that's really the ultimate goal, right?
Thank you for that great insight, panelists. I believe it is time for us to wrap up, so I will pass it over to Marc to close off.
Yes, thanks, Aarushi. And thank you, Roxy and Ben, for your wonderful insight. The work that both of you do is definitely so important. And thank you for inspiring everyone who tuned into our webinar to understand how important politics are for all of our communities and for building a kind of world that we all want to live in tomorrow. I also want to extend a thank you to our sponsors at the Center of American Women in Politics for the state of New Jersey, the Women of Power Host Committee, Susan N. Wilson, and the Julia A. Fielson Endowed Fund. I'd also like to thank our event co-sponsors, such as the Institute for Women's Leadership, Office of New Student Orientation and Family Programming, and the Rutgers University Student Assembly.
Yeah, and thank you again for our panelists and our sponsors. And if you are looking to get more updates on these great events and these great panels, follow us on social media, which is at Rutgers CYPP and Rutgers Women in Politics, and join our final session on Tuesday, April 6th at 2 p.m. and the registration is coming soon. So thank you to all of our attendance members. Thank you to our great panelists, and thank you for everyone who has been able to set up this great event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.